Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Cause Before Symptom. I am your lovely guest host, the official Urban from Urban Odyssey, covering for Pastor Carner until tomorrow night. Happy Labor Day, at least it is over here on the East Coast. Um, so I hope everybody has a nice day off and takes a little bit of time to relax. It's much deserved. Let's get my chat booted up here. Start the engines, folks. Let's see. How's it going, Boots? Nice to see you, buddy. Let's see. All right. I think we're up and running, y'all. I think so. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm glad to see everybody. Let everybody join in. Just making sure we're up and running. Right, so tonight, guys, it is the 1st of September. We're officially on the down. I mean, we've been on the downhill for a while, but we're really making it through the year. It's gone by so fast. I can't believe it. It really gets faster and faster and faster. It sure does. Hey, Claire, how you doing? Glad to see you tonight. Glad to see everybody. All the platforms. We got Boots. We got Claire. We got some people on Substack. I don't know how big the people on Substack are. I don't know. Like they've got a basic streaming system. Like I don't know if it's like views currently or views total. Like how many views total have been there. Patiently waiting for the apocalypse. That's a great way to put it, Scorpion. How are you doing tonight? Tonight we've, as I promised you, we've got a couple clips from Robert Sepher picked out. We're gonna watch his newest video, and that was what we were gonna watch last night. I had said that we were gonna do this today, part two of our movie night. So that's what I got for you tonight, and then Pastor Carner will be back with you tomorrow, and hopefully he had a good time. He goes to his yearly outing. I think he said it was the Dave Matthews concert. He goes every year for Labor Day. And so when I first started guest hosting, I remember covering for him while he went last year. So it's been just about a year. So I'm now your esteemed guest host. I've got tenure here. Yeah, it's crazy. It hasn't felt like a year in that context, but in other contexts it does. So I don't know. But guys, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna let the intro roll, and then we'll get into it. All right.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Alrighty, guys. I appreciate y'all being here with me. Tonight we're going to check out some of the videos that we had said that we were going to watch yesterday. We're going to look at Robert Sepher's new video that just dropped. He always puts out great content. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him or seen him. He's the one that wrote the book 1666, Redemption Through Sin, the one about the Sabbatean Frankists. And it's a really great book. It's great research, and that's kind of pertaining to what we're going to watch tonight. So I think that will be a bit interesting. I think it's worth seeing. Gives you a little bit of backstory and context that you don't have otherwise, I believe. So, you know the song and dance. We're going to go ahead and make me smaller and make that bigger, and then we'll get going. There we go. Down here, now I can bring this up, make that bigger. Fun. Here we go. Okay. I think we're set up now.
There have been many mystical orders that claim to possess
Perfect.
ancient esoteric knowledge that has survived until the modern day, guarded by secret societies that allegedly utilize these occult secrets for supposed physical vitality, psychic endowment, spiritual enlightenment, and establishing a political agenda. Most, if not all of these orders, trace their origins to the ancient Aryan Magi of Mesopotamia, which is where we get the modern word for magician, and whose esoteric practices were said to have been passed down since the mythical times of Atlantis. Whether that's true or not, what seems to be
One thing I like about him is that the information that he puts out is actually not the BS information that everybody puts out.
From Babylon,
The information that he puts out is
passing on their
really
Kabbalistic knowledge
deep
to the
information.
Knights Templar, who in turn brought it back into Europe, influencing groups such as the Rosicrucians and Freemasons, which allegedly hold a high degree of political influence across the globe. One of
They
the
allegedly
lesser-known
sure do.
secret societies which held a considerable amount of influence in the 18th century Europe was called the Asiatic Brethren, started in Vienna, Austria.
The
Their
best book
foundation
to read if you're
paralleled
interested in
more
this type of stuff
popular
is
Rosicrucian
Occult
order.
Theocracy.
And while
It's a
this
big book. It's like
organization
800
played
pages.
a significant role in the emergence of Adam Weishaupt's Order of the Bavarian Illuminati, they ceased to exist relatively quickly. The Asiatic Brethren has been one of the critical forerunners of the Golden Dawn and many of its descendants, as well as to be an influential force on occult practitioners such as ceremonial magician Eliphas Levi and P.B. Randolph, who introduced the principles of erotic alchemy to North America, establishing the earliest known Rosicrucian order in the United States. Of course, the Asiatic Brethren were influenced by earlier movements, most notably the Kabbalistic concepts put forth by Sabbatai Zevi, who declared himself Messiah in 1666, was considered a heretic.
It was a
by
very
Orthodox
strange year. I
Judaism
mentioned that last
for
night.
transgressions such as
The year 1666 had some of the strangest things happen in it. For instance, they created this law where basically your assets could be put into a seste q vitae trust or something to that effect. I think I butchered that, but the idea is that if you don't claim your property, the government will get it after so much time. And this is a scam where you're considered missing, dead, lost cargo at sea. You know, and this is that weird sovereign citizen stuff, but to a degree, that stuff is, how do I put this? That stuff has some basis in reality, but it's not like you can use it to your advantage, because at the end of the day, the law is what the judge tells you the law is. And that's just the way that it is. Because he's got a guy with a gun and a taser in the corner, and if he makes a mistake, you can appeal, sure, but that's going to take a lot of time, and he's not going to get punished for a wrong decision. So there's some basis in truth to that. As a matter of fact, I've been told that that's when you start looking into that stuff too hard is when you have problems. So that is some very sensitive stuff. But
pronouncing the Holy Tetragrammaton in public, breaking dietary laws, engaging in forbidden carnal activities, and wedding Sarah, a young Polish prostitute who proclaimed she would be married by the Messiah. Sabbatai's real impact and charisma stemmed from the divine acts which he performed, often just after emerging from the dark night of depression or after having sung psalms for hours in a seeming trance-like state of emotional bliss. He also encourages followers.
you got to remember these are basically just religious drug addict people because they're very likely pharmakia, sorcery, you know the deal. It's a big deal. As a matter of fact, this one thing that you really have to understand is that the people, usually most of the people who have made history, anybody that you know about in history, uh, any of the ones who were in this practicing mystery school, they were very well aware of pharmakia because if you've got millions of dollars and you're rich and you're well off, yeah, you're going to spend the money on it.
To engage in promiscuous activity. And as shocking as they were, Sabbatai proclaimed that the meaning of these paradox acts was obvious to him while he was in ecstasy, and utterly inaccessible and heretical even to himself once he had returned to his normal state of being. Despite being banished by local rabbis several times and causing shock and outrage amongst
If you go
Orthodox Jewish
to
leaders, he and
my
his
Substack,
charismatic wife gained a large.
you go to my Substack and you look up in the search bar to eliminate the opiate. To eliminate the opiate. That's the name of the book, and it's in 2 parts. And it has to do with a lot of this stuff too.
Following, and eventually established their power base in Greece and Turkey. From there, his influence grew further and quickly spread all across Europe. Sabbatai ended up in imprisonment under the Ottoman Sultan, who gave him 3 choices: to subject himself to trial of his divinity, in other words, if the arrows of the Sultan's archers would miss him, his divine status would be proven. Second, to be
Sounds
beheaded.
fair to me.
Or third, to convert to Islam.
Which one
On the
sounds
next day,
which one sounds fairest to you guys?
in other words, if the arrows of the Sultan's
So
archers
one
would
is
miss
just
him,
see if you
his divine
survive.
status would be proven. Second, to be beheaded.
Just be beheaded,
Third, to convert to Islam.
or you can be a Muslim.
On the next day, September 16, 1666, which incidentally is also my birthday, Sabbatai came before the Sultan, cast off his Jewish garb, and put a Turkish turban on his head.
Yep, there it went.
Thus, his conversion to Islam was accomplished. He covertly continued his practices and teachings in secret to his followers. Some
This
of
guy's
whom
just
also
a
converted
probably like a
and
homeless
followed
crazy
him
guy.
under the protection of Islam. Zevi's impact and popularity was due in no small part to his self-proclaimed prophet, Nathan of Gaza. According to the Jewish scholar Gershom Scholem,
What's up,
it's
Mr.
only
Bob?
through Nathan of Gaza's mystical interpretations of Sabbatai's situation and heretic deeds that the story of this new Messiah gained the mystical depth, the spiritual weight, and Kabbalistic meaning that created the necessary gravitas to turn it into such a strong movement. In fact, it is Nathan of
Glad to
Gaza's
see you again, bud.
peculiar mix of Lurianic Kabbalah, Gnostic interpretation, quotes from the Zohar, and his own mystic explanations that helped turn Sabbateanism into a future, hidden cornerstone of our Western occult lore. Nathan refers to the Messiah's soul as a holy snake among snakes. But keep in mind that the Hebrew word for snake, nakash, has the same numeric value as the term Messiah. The Sabbatean concept of a snake, or dragon.
They're very big into
in this
numbers. I can tell you that right now.
is paralleled in the Gnostic
People say,
teachings of the
they're like,
Ophites,
who cares?
a word
They
that comes
care.
from
I
the
mean, it
Greek
don't matter if you
ophi,
care. They care, and
which means
they
serpent.
conduct a lot of business
They
and a
were
lot of
members
stuff
of
according to
several
numbers.
Gnostic sects that flourished in the Roman Empire during the 2nd century and for several centuries thereafter. These sects'
what?
beliefs
It's like-
differed in various ways, but central to them all was a dualistic theology that opposed a purely spiritual supreme being,
Okay.
who was both the origin of the cosmic process and the highest good, to a chaotic and evil material world. To the Ophites,
Scorpions.
man's dilemma resulted from his being a mixture of these conflicting spiritual and material elements. Only gnosis, the esoteric knowledge of good and evil, can redeem man from the bonds of matter and make him aware of the unknown God who is the true source of all being. In their interpretation of the Garden of Eden story, the forbidden fruit was symbolic of the orgasm, and the serpent's temptation was to harness and transmute the sexual energy through esoteric tantric practice, rather than always expelling one's life force in a conventional climax that results in physical procreation. The Ophites regarded
He tried real
the
hard for that
Jehovah of
one.
the Old Testament as merely a demiurge, or
The way he phrased it
who had created
perfectly.
the material world. They attached special importance to the serpent in the biblical book of Genesis because he had enabled man to obtain the all-important knowledge of good and evil that Jehovah had withheld from them.
One thing I've learned, the strangest thing is that all of these people, the smartest people, the richest people in the world, at the very top, the reason this stuff is so hidden, that nobody knows about it, is because it's really the butt of every joke. It is the dumbest, stupidest, sex magic shit, and people just laugh at it, and so it hides in plain sight.
Accordingly,
That's the
the
truth.
serpent was a true liberator of mankind, since he first taught men to rebel against Jehovah and seek knowledge of the true, unknown God. The Ophites further regarded Christ as a purely spiritual being, who through his union with the man Jesus taught the saving gnosis, or Sophia, a feminine intuitive aspect of divinity, divine knowledge from within. That said, from the perspective of Sabbateanism, based on the Lurianic Kabbalah, which I cover in my book 1666,
It's a good book.
the esoteric interpretation of salvation
I'll put
was
the
not
link
about
to it when I
redemption
edit the
of
video
Jewish
and
people
update
from
everything. I'll put a link
slavery
to his book
amongst
in the
other
description.
people, but instead had to do with an inner salvation, an esoteric process of mystical healing and restoration of one's own soul through a term called tikkun olam, which means repairing the world, and has to do with the Lurianic Kabbalah's idea of freeing leftover divine sparks of light that permeated existence after creation. This brings us to Jacob Frank, a Polish-born Jew who 100 years after Sabbatai's death claimed to be his reincarnation. Frank was initiated into the Sabbatean elite, where the highest esoteric secrets were revealed to him that were shared only orally. These occult practices were the basis for erotic inner alchemy, tantric practices of energetic transmutation, where carnal lust is converted into spiritual gold, or what is known in the East as chi, prana.
This right here that he's talking about, all of those words, what Carner did was he was looking at words like that, and those are all referring to this whole idea of breath. That is breath, chi, prana, man. All that life force energy goes by 100 billion different names. That's breath.
Ether, vril, or life force energy.
Yeah, spirit.
Through these techniques, Frank allegedly developed psychic medium skills, through which he allegedly revealed many secrets and mysteries to his followers. continuing the tradition of strange deeds that was so critical for the foundation of Sabbateanism, such as ritualistic orgies, public nudity and affection, and other transgressions. From 1759 to 1760, Frank inspired the mass conversion of his followers into Christianity, following in the footsteps of Sabbatai Zevi's conversion into Islam.
Yeah, so
ancient hereditary.
that's a big thing. You got to remember the reason that, for instance, the reason that you should be made aware of this, the reason I'm showing you guys this, and I think this is of interest. This right here has a lot of crossover. This is a very influential time in history. So they were being forced to, the Jews were being forced to convert because of the Inquisition. You know, the Catholic Church was literally torturing people to death if you didn't convert to Catholicism. And so a lot of these Jews, and again, the Islam Muslim area was doing this too, as was previously described. So they basically just didn't die for their religion. They went and they just converted, but they practiced secretly, you know, behind the scenes. And as a matter of fact, there's a book that's like $3,000 on Amazon. It's new something. It's like an recount of that time in history when they were converting. It has a lot of detail on the schemes that they had going on in the background. And so they're you know, a lot of business going on. It's kind of like a cult or a church. It's a strange movement. They were really well connected. They were, excuse me, around so many different people that were went on to be influential. And that's really one of the things that you see pop up a lot when you start to study just these points in history, is that a lot of the same names and families and bloodlines come up, and they all mingle. And so, oh, and then the Jesuits had accepted, strangely, a lot of these they knew they were Jewish conversos into the Catholic Church, but the Jesuits were lax on their policy to accept these Jewish conversos into the Jesuit order. And so the Jesuit order was founded by a handful of important Jewish figures.
Kabbalistic teaching into the mainstream by establishing sects of Christian Sabbateans. Frank was then arrested and spent the following 12 years in captivity. This began a new and completely unexpected phase of Sabbatean Frankism, where Frank interacted with the cult of the Black Madonna and taught that there was no separation between the Messiah, God, and Shekinah, which is a word that implies the dwelling place or divine presence of God, such as the burning bush or the pillar of fire in the Bible. But in Hebrew, it is a feminine word, and in this context means the divine feminine presence of God, or in other words, goddess, the mystical embodiment of the feminine, or God's bride, implying that female sexuality was a doorway to higher states through which one can commune with the divine. That said, Frank taught that the Messiah was female, and that the Virgin Mary and Messiah were essentially the same principle. A concept which has its roots in ancient Babylon and initially found its way into Europe via the Templars. To put it into a nutshell, unlike Christianity, Frankism was not about a male god who took a human body upon himself through a human woman, but about a feminine goddess who acquired a human form. Frank appropriated elements of Catholic Mariology, but departed from Christian doctrine in two crucial respects. He claimed that the maiden was an element of the Godhead, and he declared that she was actually present in the Black Madonna icon. When Frank was finally released from captivity in 1772, he had regained a large fellowship and was again recognized as one of the most important Sabbatean leaders in Europe. However, in truth, he had moved on from many of the original teachings of Sabbatai Zevi and founded his own female cult of divine worship, as well as a strong outer circle of military defense. while in 1750s and 1760s,
They were up to some strange
Frankism was
things
first
back then,
perceived
man.
as a sect within Judaism,
Still are.
and then as a
Always
movement
have been.
on the border between Judaism and
Wow.
Christianity. Its
Wow.
expansion in 1770s and 1780s was defined by the reformulation of its tenets in terms of something that can best be called a secret society. Jacob Frank then moved in with his Sabbatean cousin in the Bohemian section of the Czech Republic, renowned for her physical beauty, and encountered her son, Moses Debrushka, who was 18 at the time and a Sabbatean from birth, who went on to become a founding member of the sect known as the Asiatic Brethren that I mentioned earlier. Frank developed strong connections into the Masonic communities of Vienna, as well as into Germany. Freemasons and secret societies during this period were interested in rediscovering the ancient wisdom and purported truth hidden in the Jewish or Kabbalistic mystery tradition, which the Knights Templar brought into Europe from their time in the Middle East. Esoteric knowledge that was passed down by the Magi, veiled by the European alchemists, and orally transmitted by the Gnostics and mystics. Jacob Frank also taught the mystery of Edom, which means red in Hebrew, and is in reference to the
They still
Edomites,
use that word today.
a largely red-haired demographic that was converted into Judaism in the 2nd century BC. And I covered in my video called Magicians of the Temple.
Apparently it's
Which brings us
Christianity.
to the Rothschilds, which translates to Red Shield in German, who financed
To the
and
Jews.
formed,
The Jews
along with
believe
Adam
Edom
Weishaupt
is
and Jacob
Christianity.
Frank, the Order of the Illuminati. After Jacob
Or
Frank
Western
passed away,
culture. It's kind of
lodges of
ambiguous,
Asiatic
but
Brethren were formed in
the Roman
Vienna in
Empire.
1781, and then in Prague, Hamburg, Berlin, and Frankfurt, where many powerful members were among their ranks, including the future King of Prussia, Frederick Wilhelm II. This order has spread from Italy to Russia already. The ruling heads of this order were unknown until 1788. They refer to Masonry as their basis. They even call it its nursery of their entire system. Their gatherings they call Melchizedek lodges, and
That's
offer their
interesting.
services to include Jews, Turks, Persians, and Armenians. The order's teachings include how to govern the spirits by breaking the 7 seals, and one is taught how to produce miracle cures and how to create gold. The order expects blind faith and blind obedience. Its regulations are the true teaching of the sons of Loyola. Incidentally,
Interesting.
Ignatius of Loyola was the Basque founder
Okay.
of the religious order of the Society of Jesus.
I didn't know
also
that he was going to
known
mention
as
this
the
either.
Jesuit order. Independent from the
I haven't seen this
Freemasons
before.
and Rosicrucians of the time, the Asiatic Brotherhood claimed a similar ancient lineage to the East in association with the Templars. The term Asia in this context, however, is not a reference to the landmass that we've come to call Asia today, but a vague reference to Asia Minor that indicates a tradition that doesn't stem from the European mainland, but from the Orient, in particular the Aryan Magi of ancient Iran, who Albert Pike claimed was the true Chaldean originators of the pre-Jewish, pre-Arabic, and pre-Babylonian Kabbalah. In the view of the Asiatic Brethren, the Kabbalah should not be based on any particular religion, but rather formed an open path for anybody interested, be they Muslim, Catholic, or Jewish, to transcend the limitations of one's own religious tradition and to gain access to the, quote, one and only true, pure, and all-embracing religion. The Asiatic Brethren established 2 streams of teachings, one in writing and a second, more closely guarded, of individual oral instructions. This sect had a great influence on later magical and theosophic orders. In the instructions of these rituals, we learn that the order is the continuation of a very ancient alchemical, theosophical, and magical tradition transmitted over centuries through various channels, not least the Knights Templars.
Yeah, that's
We
what I
find
said, that
among
book,
other
Occult
mythical
Theocracy.
narratives a vivid description
Occult Theocracy by Edith Starr Miller. It was written in the 20s, the 1920s or the 1930s. And it's probably the most complete account or timeline of the mysteries, the cults, all of them, all the groups, all of the secret societies that are known of. Uh, it's like an encyclopedia, probably more so than like a coherent book, but it does the best it can from Egypt to the, like now, the
of
20s,
the original
30s.
fall, in which a son of dawn, or Lucifer, plays a major part. The symbolism of these rituals resonates with those of the Gold und Rosenkreuz, which interpreted the first degree of regular Masonic symbols in an alchemical sense. The Asiatic Brethren were set apart from the Rosicrucian traditions of the same time in that they were much less influenced by and oriented towards Orthodox Christianity. And although they were open to Jews among their members, their legendary founding myth was also unique and was set up from the beginning to provide a platform for occult learning, teaching, and practical research hidden from the realm of influence and control of Orthodox Christianity, or Jewry for that matter. That said, the order embraced a multitude of paths towards divine gnosis through a combination of natural sciences, numerology, practical or spiritual alchemy, Kabbalah, and sex magic.
See, here's the deal. I think when it gets interesting for me is where I just think it's fascinating how they were able to have this much detail and this much crossover and this much complexity to all of their different interpretations. That's what gets me, and I think for the most part that gets anybody who's interested in history and stuff like that. It's perplexing and it's fascinating.
Many of the order's ancient tantric techniques of erotic alchemy and sex energy transmutation found their way into what became other sects, with a possible influence on the Siberian mystic Rasputin, who pronounced that the best
Thanks
way
for
to
the
reach
follow
a
on
divine
Kick.
state was through the sexual exhaustion that came after prolonged debauchery. He was best known for befriending the imperial family of Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, and for his Sabbatean-like philosophy of redemption
He was
from
like,
sin, which
as a matter of fact, I feel like Rasputin was the predecessor to Crowley. He was like Russia's Aleister Crowley.
involved orgiastic rituals of bliss and prolonged orgasmic euphoria. These occult techniques also made their way into other European esoteric orders, such as the Vril Society,
And
which was
remember,
headed by the
we had made a clear connection between the early spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, the Jesuit training program, and all of these groups that he's talking about right now.
medium Maria Orsic, who was said to have used transmuted Vril energy to achieve clairvoyance and mediumship. Vril is a word used to describe energy gained through heightened states achieved
Breath.
through the harnessing of prana, chi, or ether, all terms that describe
You
a
can
life force energy
Use all of it,
that permeates the universe and all living things. The Vril Society was
It's like they call it
absorbed
Loosh
into the
theory
National
now, but
Socialist Party,
just some stupid
which
word to
funded
not
research into
what it is.
various occult practices
Spirit.
with the goal of acquiring alternative forms of technology, such as anti-gravitic flight, which it allegedly did achieve, but supposedly did not perfect until the end of the war. Speculation persists around events that took place in Antarctica, codenamed Operation High Jump, when the Allies sent 4,700 armed troops, an aircraft carrier, destroyers, and failed in an attempt to destroy a holdout German base which allegedly was built below the Antarctic ice. Traces of this occult influence could also be seen in the writings of the notorious sex magician Aleister Crowley, the teachings of Taoist practitioner Montauk Chia, and the alchemical techniques put forth by Samuel Ein Wyor. The point being that the esoteric information itself does not seem to subscribe to any one type of political or moral philosophy, but seems to resemble the theme in the movie Star Wars, where the Force
Right?
was the same
See?
mystical energy used by the protagonist Jedi Knights as was used by the dark side. The Force itself was not considered good or evil, but was more like an element of nature that can be harnessed for either, depending on the practitioner. My name is Robert Sepher. I'm an anthropologist. My published work
This
is
guy's
available
great.
on Amazon.
This guy is
and
really
through
great.
all three
I've
major
I've
book
learned
outlets.
quite a bit from him, and he's not really afraid to tell the full story, and I appreciate that. So this was a precursor, and the next one we're about to watch is the newest video he put out, and I felt like you needed a
Very
little bit
few
of a
people
pre-context because I just wanted to make sure everybody knew where we were at, because that's kind of what I feel like he's building off of in this episode.
know about the Sassoon family, a Jewish dynasty whose wealth, power, and influence span centuries and continents. Often called the Rothschilds of the East, their story begins in Iraq, where they were prominent bankers for the Ottoman Empire. David Sassoon, the patriarch, was born in 1792 into a family of wealth and influence, with his father serving as treasurer to the governor of Baghdad. The notoriously corrupt governor threatened his life, so he decided to flee Baghdad around 1829 due to persecution and extortion, to Persia, and then to British-protected Bombay, India, now called Mumbai, where he became a successful merchant and established a massive trading business, focusing on commodities like cotton, textiles, spices, and opium.
Opium.
This marked the beginning of the Sassoon family's immense wealth and influence, establishing them as one of the richest families in the world. In Bombay, David Sassoon leveraged his linguistic skills in Arabic, Hebrew, Persian, Turkish, and later Hindustani, and existing trade networks to establish David Sassoon and Company, capitalizing on opportunities within the British Empire's expanding trade networks. The Sassoons grew opium in India to sell in China, then purchased tea and silk from China to sell in England. Between India and England, trade flowed both ways, where cotton, sugarcane, wheat, and other crops were sent to England, and English manufactured goods would be shipped to India, and profits reinvested to increase opium production, and the cycle would repeat again in a triangular trade. The poppies grown in numerous lush fields in India were processed by the British East India Company's enormous factory, shipped down the Ganges River to Calcutta, and from there transported to China and other parts of Asia,
Pretty fascinating, all in all.
with vast profits to be earned from Chinese and Japanese opium dens. David Sassoon and his 8 sons rapidly expanded their drug dealing business, resulting in endemic drug addiction in China's coastal cities. The Sassoons' rise
Pretty bad.
was deeply intertwined with British colonial interest. After the British East India Company's trade monopoly ended in 1833, private merchants like the Sassoons gained access to lucrative markets. David Sassoon aligned his business with British imperial ambitions, benefiting from the empire's infrastructure naval power, and political influence. His firm established branches in Calcutta, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and England, creating a global trade network that mirrored the British Empire's reach. The Sassoon family's most significant and controversial role was in the opium trade, which became a cornerstone of their wealth, particularly after the First Opium War from 1839 to 1842, which was fought between Britain and China, triggered by China's attempts to suppress the inflow of opium. China's loss resulted in the Treaty of Nanking, which forced China to legalize opium, open 5 ports to foreign trade, and grant extraterritorial
Bro, where's
rights
he
to
getting this
foreigners.
video of these people doing
This
this?
treaty
That's what I want to know.
created a
He's got
lucrative
all of
opportunity
he's got
for
it laying around, I
Sassoon.
bet.
By the 1860s, David Sassoon and Company dominated the opium trade, handling approximately 70% of Indian opium exports to China by outmaneuvering competitors through direct purchases from Indian producers. The opium trade was legal in Britain and widely accepted as a commodity in the 19th century, quoted alongside gold and silver in commercial papers. However, its devastating social impact in China, fueling addiction and economic disruption, contribute to what is now known as China's century of humiliation.
This is a
The
really
Sassoons' wealth from opium was
I think as a matter of fact, the whole thing with the opium wars is it's probably one of the biggest the the biggest atrocities to have happened that most people don't know about. I don't think the vast majority of people know much about it, if anything. They might mention it once or twice in a history textbook, but that's about it. Yeah, it was pretty screwed up.
instrumental in their rise, but also tied them to one of the most morally contentious enterprises of the colonial era. The family's influence extended beyond opium, which financed other ventures, such as building the Sassoon docks in Bombay in 1875, the first commercial wet docks, boosting India's cotton trade, investing in cotton mills, real estate, and of course, banking. It is at this
Banking.
time when the Sassoons started intermarrying with the Rothschild banking family,
course
merging
they
two of
did.
the most prominent Jewish dynasties of the 19th and early 20th centuries, marking a significant union of wealth, influence, and social standing.
Wenn je finna Rothschild, oi diddle 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 dum. Ganze Tag wollt ihr sie bitte bam, wenn je finna reicher Mann.
The Rothschilds, an Ashkenazi Jewish banking family from Frankfurt, were renowned for their international banking network across Europe. The marriage between these families connected their commercial and social networks, reinforcing their positions with global Jewish and aristocratic circles. The most notable marriage occurred on October 19, 1887, when Sir Edward Albert Sassoon, who inherited leadership of David Sassoon and Company after his father's death, married Aline Caroline de Rothschild, daughter of Baron Gustav de Rothschild of the Paris branch of the Rothschild family. This marriage was strategic, consolidating ties between the Sassoons' mercantile empire, rooted in Bombay, Shanghai, and London, and the Rothschilds' financial dominance in Europe. The
Good
couple
information.
maintained close ties with the British elite, including the Prince of Wales, later King Edward VII, and their marriage produced 2 children, Philip and Sybil, who further integrated the family into British high society. Philip became a prominent politician,
I think we had watched
serving
that.
as a member of Parliament known for his lavish entertaining, and Sybil married Earl of Rock-Savage, blending the Sassoon Rothschild lineage with British aristocracy. Rothschild means red shield, a color that was used to describe the ancient Phoenicians. Phoenician comes from the ancient Greek word phoenix, which means red, the term used by the Greeks to refer to the seafaring merchants of that region, particularly those from cities like Tyre. But the Phoenicians referred to themselves as Canaanites, and their alphabet,
Interesting.
which is what our modern alphabet is based on, was identical
I've heard
to
that.
ancient Block Hebrew. In
Yeah,
fact,
absolutely.
Europe gets its name from Europa, a Phoenician princess from Tyre, the original capital of Phoenicia, 12 miles from the border
Israel.
with modern Israel. That said, Phoenician DNA sequenced from Carthage has been shown to be identical to European. It is in places like ancient Phoenicia where the symbol known as the Seal of Solomon or
Yep.
Star of David was prominently used alongside the swastika, both symbols predating Judaism and finding their Kabbalistic origins stemming from among the ancient Aryan Magi, which means magicians, of Chaldea, which is modern-day Iraq, Turkey, Iran, and Mesopotamia. According to Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy, quote, "The mysteries of the Jews were identical with those of the pagan Greeks, who took them from the Egyptians,
Yes.
who borrowed them in their turn from the
Absolutely.
Chaldeans, who got them from the Aryans, the Atlanteans, and so on." The Sassoons claimed direct Davidic lineage, the ancient Israelite royal bloodline from which Jesus Christ was believed to be descended. One figure, the noted Kabbalist Avram Sassoon, claimed descent from the fifth son of King David. Cecil Roth, in his book The Sassoon Dynasty, says, quote, "After it attained prominence, the Sassoon clan endeavored to link itself up with these remote but tempting distinguished homonyms. It assumed that, after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain by the Catholic monarchs in 1492, their ancestors immigrated eastward, first to Salonika, then Constantinople, then to Mesopotamia. Salonika was the primary home of the Donme, a group of crypto-Jews who publicly converted to Islam in the late 17th century, but secretly continued to follow the teachings
Absolutely.
of the Sabbatean movement and its founder,
They're everywhere.
Sabbatai Zevi, who declared himself Messiah in 1666, declaring redemption was available through acts of sin, including ritualistic orgies and tantric alchemy thought to awaken dormant mystical abilities, guarded esoteric techniques brought into Europe from the Holy Land by the Knights Templar. When Zevi was imprisoned by the Ottoman Sultan, he was given the choice of conversion to Islam or execution. He chose to convert, and his followers, the Donme, followed suit, converting to Islam publicly, but continuing to practice their Jewish Sabbatean faith in secret. They are considered crypto-Jews, meaning they outwardly adopted another religion, in this case Islam, but maintained their heretical Kabbalistic beliefs privately. A century after Sabbatai Zevi's death, Jacob Frank, a follower of the Sabbatean movement, claimed to be Zevi's successor and also claimed to be a messianic figure. According to Rabbi Marvin Antelman, Mayor
That's the
Amschel
book that I was telling
Rothschild,
you about earlier.
Adam Weishaupt, and Jacob Frank were connected in the formation of the Illuminati, a conspiracy to establish a global order through the infiltration of secret societies, such as Freemasonry. In his book, To Eliminate the Opiate, Antelman
There it is.
asserts that Rothschild financed both Frank and Weishaupt, motivated by a desire to control global finance and advance a Frankist-inspired agenda for a new world order through Jesuit-like organizational structures. This alliance supposedly aimed to destroy traditional Judaism.
That makes sense. So what he's saying is Jesuit-like structures. Okay. So the idea with the Jesuits is that they were spying on everybody. You got to understand them basically as one of the first intelligence networks. I know, right? That is interesting saying. Especially now that crypto is the whole cryptocurrency, huh? Yeah. Really. But yeah, the Jesuits formed the first intelligence networks because they had the Inquisitions, excuse me, they had the Inquisitions, they were torturing people, and some information came out that way. Some didn't, of course. But after that, they had the Catholic confessional. They were able to, be the confessors for the whole town. And then they would write this stuff in journals, and they would have bookshelves just full of journals filled up with information, like catalogs on everybody. So the Jesuits are intelligence information management. Basically, the Jesuit model is you learn what a person needs, and then you control how you fulfill that need in such a way to condition or program a response. Pavlovian conditioning. And you use the manipulation of that need to get what you want. That's Jesuitical spiritual exercises come in there. I guess it's the blueprint, which was my findings exactly when you find out that the spiritual exercises are the basis for all of it.
Christianity and traditional social structures, paving the way for movements like communism and Reform Judaism. According to Antelman, quote, "It was the founder of the Rothschild dynasty who convinced Weishaupt to accept the Frankist doctrine, and who afterward financed the Illuminati with the aim of fulfilling the Frankist plot of subverting the world's religions." The Illuminati's goals, per Antelman, included undermining world religions, abolishing monarchies, subverting national borders, and promoting a new world order through infiltration of governments and once noble secret societies. This is said to have influenced events like the French Revolution.
Yeah, and so the influencing good societies, what they did, for instance, with Freemasonry, a simple little switch. They replaced King Solomon in the Masonic myth and story and legend with Nimrodism, and they switched the two subtly. So they made it look as if they were paying homage to the story of Solomon, King Solomon. But, for instance, one word that basically is a high-level Freemasonic word that there's very little written about is Jabulon, which is a combination of J-A-H, Yah, Bu, Baal, On, and On is the Egyptian sun god. So it was like the IHS of the Jesuits. They don't want anybody to know about that because that shows you the switch that they've done, real subtle, between King Solomon and Nimrod. And so they have infiltrated and got these people on saying, we have the last remaining legitimate lodge. We have the lost word. That is the whole Masonic story, is this whole lost word of Hiram Abiff. And so we've got the secret, and rope people
Russian
in.
Revolution and modern globalism, which I covered in my video, Subversive Origins of Communism, which is linked in the description.
Isn't it weird? That's odd. They've got in China. They've got a picture of Karl Marx in their parliament, and we all know who Karl Marx's real name was.
Followers infiltrated Masonic lodges.
It's weird.
And converted outwardly to
They
Christianity.
got a picture of
while
a Brazilian
secretly
on the wall.
maintaining their beliefs, allowing them to gain influence in institutions like the Roman Church and Vatican. Antelman described them like the
Vatican police break up gay orgy at home of one of Pope Francis' advisors. Wow, it's fun.
Roman Church and Vatican. Antelman describes Frankism as a movement of complete evil and labels Frank as one of the most degenerate figures in Jewish history, echoing historian Gershom Scholem's view of him as, quote, a truly corrupt and degenerate individual, excommunicated by traditional rabbis. In 1759, Frank rejected the Talmud, and many of his followers converted to Catholicism, a move that allowed them to
They're insincerity became evident through their continued adherence to Frankist doctrines such as redemption through sin.
Continue their messianic work as Catholics.
So,
Noted
redemption through sin is schizophrenia.
by the reverence of the Black Madonna, which Frank perceived as a manifestation of the exiled feminine divine
Pretty
presence,
wild. I'm just
which
saying.
the Kabbalah calls Shekinah, and the Virgin Mary was his daughter, Eva Frank. She was declared the messianic leader of the Frankist sect, with some followers keeping small statues of her in their homes. While much of this information is unavailable or labeled as conspiracy theory, there are initiates and those with access to occult esoteric knowledge that have recently come forward with similar takes. Alexander Dugin is a Russian far-right political philosopher. Born into a military intelligence family,
Oh, boy.
Dugin was an anti-communist dissident during the 1980s and is sometimes referred to as Putin's brain because of his ideological influence on Russian politics.
Huh.
Dugin recently posted on X, quote, "First, Rothschilds were Frankist and financed Eva Frank, daughter of Jacob Frank, that was considered to be Matronita, Shekinah herself, or feminine messiah in the eyes of cult followers. Soros is part of the Frankist network.
Yeah.
That has not much to do with Orthodox Judaism." Soros and the Democrats are essentially part of a large network. They have fundamental economic interests and subordinate politics to these economic interests. They believe it is their duty, right, and mission to reform humanity, which means forcing countries to adopt what they, from Washington, as Democrats, consider right. This leads to the world being flooded with migration and migration chaos, unleashed gender madness. Traditional families better retreat when the American Democrats come, because then there will be pride parades, rainbow flags, transgender movements, gender reassignment surgeries, and a world no longer consisting of men and women, but an unidentified number and kinds of beings. This is the second consequence, and they don't hesitate to use wars to achieve their goals, as they did with the Russian-Ukraine war. We can't allow migrants to simply make a mess of our streets. Let them enter our country without a permit. Let them be violent towards our women. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. We can't just sit back and be legal. No, there's a solution. You can't let them in.
Nah, ain't that wild. Bro's just living his best life. But it's good information. Some of the stuff that he said there I had not heard before. That's strange. This guy, this Russian philosopher, just randomly posts this on Twitter. That's crazy. Alright, let's see. I'll watch this outro. Yeah, guys, you know what? I'm gonna actually send the link to the playlist in the chat. There you go. Boom. Here's the playlist. Y'all can save it and watch any of the ones if you find any interesting ones that you like. Be sure to subscribe to him if you like this content. Okay, here we go. CIA's MKUltra infiltration of media. I'll see what he's got to say on this.
Program implemented by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency intended to develop procedures that could be used to psychologically manipulate or brainwash individuals or unsuspecting populations. It was a covert continuation of scientific experiments conducted by German scientists during World War II on human subjects during interrogations with hallucinogenic substances such as mescaline, with the stated goal of eliminating the will
Oh,
of
dude,
the
that's
person
cool.
being examined.
It really is a
The
small,
CIA
you know, it's a
project
small little
was a
community once you really get,
continuation of these earlier
you
Nazi
start seeing all
experiments
the different
by
people who like
exploiting the advances
know
made
each
by
other.
the
It's crazy.
numerous German scientists who were hired to work for the U.S. as part of Operation Paperclip. The post-World War II American MKUltra program used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions, in addition to high doses of psychoactive drugs such as LSD and other chemicals like scopolamine. Without the subject's consent, the CIA used electroshocks, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture. MKUltra's scope was broad, with activities carried out under the guise of research at more than 80 institutions, aside from the military, including colleges and universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. That said, the attempts at psychological manipulation was not restricted to individual experimentation, but implemented on a large scale to influence public behavior through
Yeah, I
the
think that's fair.
infiltration of various forms of media, including film and music. John Homeston, a retired CIA agent, has admitted on national Russian television that the CIA was behind the creation of the 1980s hip-hop scene and financed major hip-hop acts including NWA, Africa Boombata, and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. The government at the time spent, quote, big money, serious money, on this covert operation destined to further division and corrupt the American youth to nihilist, anti-establishment, and anti-American ideologies, he explained in a half-hour interview broadcast on national television. Famous hip-hop songs of the legendary hip-hop outfit NWA were even scripted by a team of psychologists and war propagandists of the CIA.
Wow.
F the police, and when I'm called off, I got a sawed off, squeeze the trigger, and bodies are hauled off, and other nihilist and anti-establishment lyrics were intended to unleash a wave of cynicism towards
Absolutely.
authorities, promote the use of heavy
Listen,
drugs.
I'm telling you, this is something that I will die on this hill. I believe that music and television are the number one ways that they have created all of this madness in people. I do, because you can tell a lot about a person based on the music that they listen to. And I won't say I'm not saying anything's bad, but what I will say is I have noticed a decline in the quality of music that is being made and that people are finding interesting, because it seems like the worse the song is now, objectively worse, the better it does. So it's, I don't know.
And entice the youth with revolutionary counter-establishment ideas. The retired CIA agent claims the social engineering maneuver was extremely successful. Quote, "We understood at the time that
boy.
music was a powerful means of propaganda to reach the youth," explained the 77-year-old man. "Our mission was to use teenage angst to our advantage and turn Generation X into a decadent, pro-drug, and anti-establishment culture that would create uprisings and further division within society."
And
We even
let's just run a thought experiment. So, let's say none of that's true. That's all just a conspiracy theory. We're crazy. How is it that that's happened? Like, how is it that that's happened? You just told me that that happened randomly, or you're going to sit here and you're going to give me all this whistleblowers that have come forth and said, "Hey, this is a deliberate scheme by the CIA." No, that's not true. It just happened for other reasons. There's no other reasons I know of, but It's definitely not that one.
Infiltrated mainstream radio to promote their music.
Yeah, the black demonic
and reach millions
scrying
of
mirror.
people every day, he admitted, visibly proud of the accomplishment. For many of us in the CIA, infiltrating the 1980s hip-hop scene was one of...
The funny thing is the whole thing with like the fingers, that's, it could be a triangle, sure, but at the higher level of understanding, it's actually the female organ and the womb. It's the feminine symbol.
One of the CIA's most successful experiments of propaganda to date, he acknowledged during the interview. The retired CIA agent, who was granted a Russian residence permit in 2011, also claimed Lior Cohen, commonly known as the tall Israeli who runs hip-hop, is a CIA asset. When it comes to engineering culture, no one touches Lior Cohen, Homestead admitted. He ended up promoting rappers such as Jay-Z and Kanye West, and more recently brought Migos and Young Thug to prominence. Some experts openly admit hip-hop nihilism, which was expressed in the use of harder, more self-destructive drugs like heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine, pushed United States President Richard Nixon into the war on drugs, a campaign of prohibition of drugs and foreign military intervention, with the stated aim being to define and reduce the illegal drug trade within America and around the world. Quote, "The chaos we caused in America helped the government justify overseas wars of plunder to Middle America. The country wouldn't be where it is today without hip-hop." Of course, hip-hop is not the only musical genre that has been infiltrated by the CIA.
A lot of people don't think this the right way, but the term Illuminati is not it's not like a club that, like, I'm in this. No, it's not a club like that. But what it means is it is people who perceive themselves and their circle of friends to be in the subgroup of people where you are in the minority, or the occult or the esoteric. Exoteric is 51%. It's something that 51% of everybody knows about. The majority. That's the exoteric on the outside. The esoteric is what 49% know. And so, people who perceive themselves to be inside that minority, they are enlightened to certain truths in the world. And so that is what the Illuminati is, and that's what they're doing with all these signs. They're saying, I know what this means.
CIA.
And that's what this one means. They're saying, it's our secret. We know what this means. And stay quiet. Don't tell anybody what it means.
And certainly not the first. Many popular musicians of the second half of the 20th century, like David Crosby, John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas, and Frank Zappa, grew up on military bases. They also resided in Los Angeles, in a military intelligence base on Laurel Canyon, where they were allegedly involved in the CIA's MKUltra program, a mind control operation whose real focus was to produce, or at least manipulate, the 60s counterculture scene. Jim Morrison was one of the earliest to arrive.
Somebody made a good point. As soon as the Vietnam War ended, the whole counterculture thing apparently disappeared. That's what some of the older generation people are saying. I don't remember where I heard that, but it was from somebody who was quite older. And they said as soon as Vietnam ended, the counterculture just disappeared.
Son of the U.S. Navy admiral in command of the warships involved in the false flag operation known as the Gulf of Tonkin incident of 1964, which was used to justify the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War.
Of course they did.
There's a conspiracy out there about Laurel Canyon. Now, Laurel Canyon is out in California, and there was a Air Force watchtower out there back in the late World War II area, back in the 1960s. And back then they had a studio there. Now this studio had a sound stage, a editing stage, a animation editing room. It had everything. Now, this place, I guess,
Wow.
was used for the atomic testing footage. So all that footage was taken to this studio in Laurel Canyon and was edited there and was processed. So after they got this, they reviewed all the footage from the atomic testing. Now, what's really strange about this is, a lot of musicians came out of this place back in the 1960s. Actually, all of those hippie
This place is
musicians
like
that you hear.
this place right here is like it seems to me like one of the American Tavistock Institutes.
Actually came from Laurel Canyon. Now, a lot of people say that these musicians had ties with the military and with the studio up in Laurel Canyon, which was an Air Force base. So,
Absolutely.
as the Vietnam War was going on, this hippie movement out of Laurel Canyon started becoming very popular. And in fact, Jim Morrison's
They all
father,
know each other.
Stephen Morris, was a very highly naval officer, very high ranking, and he was actually part of the
So many of
Gulf
them are, like I said,
Tonkin.
Pat. They all are like it's insane once you start looking. All of the same names just keep popping up, and there's just so many connections, and it's like there's like this huge web that nobody knows about except them.
Which started the Vietnam War. So as this was going on, his son Jim Morrison was becoming very popular in the cultural movement. A lot of famous artists came from there. Even the Beach Boys came from there. Now, the Beach Boys, got very famous back in the day during the whole hippie movement, but also Charlie Manson was very popular too. Now, Charlie Manson was a songwriter, so he would actually write songs for the Beach Boys. Now, if you don't believe me, here's an actual song that he wrote, and this is, in fact, him singing it.
Give up your work. Come on, you can't be. I'm your kind, oh, your kind, I can see.
Not bad.
Walk on, walk on.
So, that right there is, Charlie
Better than
Manson.
anything
So
today.
he was very popular with the Beach Boys and
True.
with the other groups. And of course, we all know what happened to Charlie Manson. So, it's very, very strange, guys. And what I'm trying to say is this could possibly be an MKUltra type of experiment on society back in the day.
I think it
This
was
a way
because
to control.
I've got a whole 20-minute clip of news reporters, celebrities having these weird. They'll just go out of it. They'll snap out of reality for a minute, and then they'll come out of the trance live on TV, and you're like, what? Why is this happening so much in Hollywood? I've never seen this happen in my life to anybody I've ever known or talked to.
The youth. They weren't really sure what was going to happen with the youth during the Vietnam War when it was all going to happen. They were probably afraid of retaliation, maybe people getting violent actually. So they needed some kind of opposition control. And
Makes sense to me.
maybe these musicians were a part of that. So Laurel Canyon, if you haven't heard about it, go ahead and look it up.
The Laurel Canyon compound was recently purchased by actor and filmmaker Jared Leto for $5 million. The Army Air Corps officially built this top-secret movie production studio in 1947. Military training films and top-secret Department of Defense documentaries were produced, including a series on above-ground nuclear tests in Nevada. That said, celebrities like Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley are also said to have worked there, signing non-disclosure agreements. Oh, and Timothy Leary lived across the street. For decades, a so-called anti-propaganda law prevented the U.S. government's covert broadcasting arm from delivering politically deceptive programming to American audiences. But in 2013, that came silently to an end with the implementation of a new reform passed under the Obama administration as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, which included an amendment that nullified the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948, which explicitly forbids information and psychological operations aimed at
Very
influencing
possible.
US
Yeah, I
public
think
opinion. Critics claim
maybe.
that the
I'm not
act
sure, but
also
you might be
unleashed
right.
thousands of hours per week of government-funded radio and TV programs for domestic U.S. consumption in what has been criticized as a green light for politically motivated social engineering.
They were probably doing it a
and
long time
US
before it
domestic
was legal to do
propaganda
it.
efforts. The U.S. government has been pulling the levers behind the scenes in Hollywood for decades, from
That they
funding
have.
the 1954 animated movie Animal Farm to more recently Transformers and Iron Man. The propaganda comes in many disguises, including patriotic musical lyrics, comic books, and even abstract expressionist art. Sometimes the spin is so subtle, audiences don't even notice the CIA or military intelligence are calling the shots. American operatives aren't the only propaganda artists in the world, of course. They just happen to be the most sophisticated. And propaganda is most impactful when people don't even think it's propaganda.
True.
And in actuality, the government has influenced thousands of movies, TV shows, and
The best way it's put is Jordan Maxwell had said, propaganda doesn't deceive you. It helps you deceive yourself.
programming targeting children, portraying certain racial populations as born oppressors, and promoting a woke ideology and antisocial behaviors. Politicians, activist groups, and cultural institutions, including universities and companies like Disney and DreamWorks, are being weaponized because they're deliberately inserting propaganda and social engineering into their content to perpetuate their far-left agendas, including a cultural decline in traditional values and justifying a demographic shift that mainstream media denies is happening. As an anthropologist, I feel it's my responsibility to bring attention to the blatant attempt to derail the strength and fortitude of the family unit by eradicating national identity, concepts of ancestral heritage, racial
I agree.
and cultural affiliation, free speech, and even the biological notion of gender, in an effort to replace a sense of pride in local community with a globalist Marxist persona that is easier to manipulate and govern by an unelected authoritarian sect of totalitarian communist dictators. My name is Robert Sepher. I'm an anthropologist.
Yeah,
My
go
published work is
seriously.
available on Amazon.
Highly suggest you go subscribe to him. He is a very talented researcher, video maker. Great channel to follow. Yeah, absolutely. That was the whole playlist. There's just like some of the ones that I thought looked cool in there. But what do you guys think? Did you guys learn anything from this? Did you see anything that you hadn't seen before, or learn anything that you didn't know before? I hope so. That was my goal. That's always my goal. Is when I get up here is I want people to at least leave with having learned one or hopefully two new things. That's all I can hope to do. Yeah, this guy's got all kinds of stuff. Honestly, he's got a lot of different topics. And I'm actually working on an article because of basically this idea that you can all of these, robo assassins, the programmed assassins who go and shoot schools and stuff like that. I am putting together a program that is based on the book Programmed to Kill. That's a book that was written about quite literally that, like all of the similarities in the childhoods of serial killers. A lot of serial killers had sexual trauma and certain very like eerie differences for the subgroup they were in. And so take that, and I've kind of mixed in some side by side like neurolinguistic programming, a little bit of propaganda. How does that influence things? And I am also looking at it in terms of this idea of, I guess you could say, everyone's being radicalized. I think that's a fair thing to say, and I don't like. I'll be front with it. Like, I think it's everybody. I think we're being trained or conditioned, Pavlovian conditioning, to think in more extreme poles. So whereas people used to be able to get along, if you were on one side and I was on another, people would at least be able to, agree to disagree. But now we're so charged and polarized into a dialectic. It's deteriorating, and I think that is a training. That's how it works. You do this slowly and subtly over a lot of time. People don't even notice, and it's Pavlovian conditioning. Yeah, the second video was really good. The second video was his newest one. It's this one that just released, and he's got a few other more obscure books, but his main one is 1666, and he's doing very well on YouTube right now. So I'm guessing he's probably, I don't know if he's working. Excuse me, I don't know if he's working on any other books right now. I hope so. I think it would. His book's actually not like, it's not hard reading either. It's a I don't know, maybe less than 200 pages, and it's pretty easy to read. He's a very dense, or I don't know if that would call it, he's dense in information. He writes like he's straight to the point, but it's not confusing. He doesn't give you a lot of filler. He's very, front with it. This is a good one if you really want to understand the doctrine. This video came out a few months ago, the Luciferian Doctrine Explained. That is a very good video. I think he does a good way at explaining the world view that they have, their view of the world from the opposite side. But he also has stuff on mythology. He also has stuff on ancient Greece and Rome and stuff like that. He's got a lot of stuff. So if you guys enjoyed it, definitely go and show him some support. But with that, guys, I think that's where I'm going to end it tonight. I think that's sufficient. I think that is a good place to stop. And until next time, I mean, I can't believe it's been a year. I think it's insane just to put everything into perspective. How small we are, how big the world is, how ancient these things are. It's interesting, but it is one of those things. It's like the snake eating its own tail. It just goes round and around in circles. But to everybody across the internet, it has been my pleasure, my privilege to guest host for y'all. Y'all see me probably soon. Carner may want to enjoy a little bit more of the summer before it ends. We've got maybe, I don't know, it's been much cooler here lately. So, I don't know, maybe another month left before it starts cooling down, where you need to have a jacket or something. But, yeah, I appreciate it. My best wishes to everybody. Have a good day off tomorrow. And I will see you the next time, guys. Thanks. Good night.